Bring the Thunder podcast here with Joe and Sapphire tonight. We're just going to be wrapping up the home game against Houston. Pretty solid win. Obviously, the standout is Shai, 51, like it was nothing, 18 out of 30. Just a classic Shai performance, and to go along with 5 rebounds, 7 assists, a block, and a steal. J-Dub follows up his 41 with a great game of 24, 4, and 3 on 50%. 4 of 5 from deep, which was awesome. And a team high plus 13. Got Chet back in the lineup tonight, 11 and 11. The double big actually looked pretty decent tonight. Hartenstein did his thing with 8, 5, and 6. Kaysen followed up off the bench with 14, 5, and 4. So, yeah, I mean, just an overall great offensive game again tonight. Struggled a little bit on the defensive side of the ball again. Let up 128 points to the Houston Rockets without 3 of their core players. Cam Whitmore for 27 and Reed Shepherd for 25. But, yeah, this is just a classic OKC victory.
Yeah, man, I agree. It looked like, they had it close at the second half, and then third half we kind of blitzed them, and that's what it feels like most of the season has been in terms of wins. Like, obviously there are wins where we're, blowing out the team after the first quarter, but that's of course how we would want it as fans, but that's not how it's going to always be. And I don't mind, having teams test us in the first half, and then second half we kind of lock in. And
right,
like we've mentioned before, that's where most great teams are usually successful, are in that third quarter, especially highly efficient in the fourth quarter. And that's kind of where we've been, and all the guys are chipping in, playing their exact roles. I mean, we've got Aaron Wiggins probably coming into that 6th man of the year competition now, and putting his name into that ballot. We have Lou Dort that's in top 3 DPOY talks right now. We have Shai leading in MVP. I mean, things could not be better from like a fan perspective and a team perspective. I mean, we had 1 loss there, and then, we're going back on another win streak here. So I'm really happy about that. Like, 50 wins before 12 losses. I mean, who would have thought that when we were at, 40 wins with only 10 losses?
Yeah.
that our next 10 would come this quickly.
Exactly. And you kind of touched on, teams that are, better teams that end up doing great things are really good in the second half primarily. And OKC was plus 12 in the third quarter, 39 to 27. We see them do that pretty much nightly, where they kind of start the game off. The offense has been flowing out beautifully, but they start the game off in kind of a back and forth, and they kind of take control in either the third or definitely the fourth quarter. So I really can't complain offensively. This team is looking outstanding, which has been kind of like the question mark all year, where who's the third scorer, where are they going to get scoring outside of Shai? And I think that those questions have definitely been answered. But yeah, we're getting a few Instagram comments. Are we concerned about the defense? We got a couple of them. Listen, I tonight wasn't great, and it's been kind of a consistent thing where we're letting up over 115, even to teams that don't have their star players. It's odd to me because it really looks like we're playing solid defense, especially tonight. It was just these players keep knocking down shots. And I think one thing we got to take into an account is that this is their championship. Every time they play OKC, no matter where, they're going to give it their all. They're going to give it their best. And the guys have been knocking down shots. I also think it's a regular season game where, maybe we're not treating every game as a game 7, which is okay. I mean, we're 50 and 11. We're trying to stay healthy. I mean, we had the J-Dub scare tonight. And at the end of the day, we're still winning. So I wouldn't be too concerned. We've seen what this team can do defensively when they're locked in. We were also missing an Alex Caruso tonight, which is also – well, actually, he got injured tonight. So we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned defensively yet.
Yeah, I want to follow up that comment with kind of the follow-up question that Sonny mentioned in the chat was, what's wrong with our defense all of a sudden? I think it's just post-All-Star game. We're kind of locking in for a run, and so we're going to see this team kind of get better and better as we get closer to the playoffs. And, of course, we're going to, provide more rest to these guys as well as we kind of continue on with the season. But I think we mentioned it last stream, and it just comes down to, I guess, the focus part. But also, we're just trying to keep these guys healthy. Mark is going to continuously experiment, and like you mentioned, we're getting the best shot from the other side. And this is not a easy stretch by any like any part of our imagination. Like this is like I think we're middle of the pack in terms of strength of schedule, post All-Star games. So we're going to see some tough games. It's not like we have an easy schedule to, finish out this second part of the season. So that's kind of the things that are attributing to what's going on. There's like a multiple things that are factoring in. And then of course we're integrating Chet back into the lineup. So that also impacts rotations and, a multitude of things. So it feels like we're just trying to stay healthy, like you mentioned, tread water, get these wins. We don't have to blow out teams by 30, 40 points like we were early part of the season, as long as we're continuing to get these W's. And I don't think from Mark's perspective, the number one goal in each single game is to just come out with the win. It's, have some adversity battles. And I know that's not what fans want to hear, but he's going to try to keep things fresh and do new things. And that's just part of being part of Thunder basketball, part of the culture, man.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, it's a great point. I think he's starting to get there and try to get these games, a little closer than they should be on purpose, because there's a reason for that. And it's quite mad in the head, but it makes complete sense, right? Because when you're a team that's 50-11 and hasn't had many games that come down to 1 to 2 possessions, you're not going to be ready for those games to start the playoffs. You don't want to find out if you're ready for those in the first round. You want to find out now. You want to find out before the season. You want to have your team be in those positions, find out what they're made of, and get them comfortable in those 1 to 2 possession games, which, I mean, I think it's quite apparent that Mark is kind of focusing on that, especially in these games where we saw the product on the floor. We saw if we locked in just a little bit more on the defense, we would have wiped these guys. I mean, it wasn't a competition tonight. Shai was getting anything he wanted. Chet was blocking everything at the rim. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a good thing for OKC. I mean, they showed it tonight that they could handle, an early fourth quarter surge and bounce back, unlike what they did against Minnesota. So it's just a learning curve. Listen, we're still young. These guys got to get ready. And right now, from what I'm seeing, that they're going to be ready.
Yeah, this also works against short-handed Rockets team and, at times against a short-handed Minnesota team where we kind of hit some cruise control or, have that lack of focus. And, of course, crazy shot making has to happen for the other teams to generally beat us, even when we're kind of playing this level of defense, what we consider lower tier than what we were playing. But what we were playing was a historic number one defense, a top defense we've ever seen in the NBA. So to keep that, exactly, ever. So to keep that, at a straight line is going to be really tough. I mean, we dropped from like a number one defense to a number 3 defense. It's not like we're, jumping off a cliff or anything, or it's anything where we need to be concerned.
Right. And then another thing with that is I think it's really important to focus more on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, the leap that Chet is making, I know he had a little bit of a rougher game tonight, but he's been injured. He's been in and out of the lineup, so we can't expect 20 every night from him. But you could clearly see the leap and the maturity in his game. J-Dub is making another leap, which is just kind of concerning for the league because he already made his first, and now he just keeps on progressing. We're seeing guys like Casey Wallace start to consistently put up points. Aaron Wiggins is consistently putting up points. He had a rougher game tonight, but I mean, he's still one of our go-to guys, and that's a problem for the rest of the league because as the season goes on, OKC is just getting deeper and deeper. And when you run into an 8-9 man rotation in the playoffs and you're tired in the game 7 of the semis or the Western Conference Final, OKC is going to be ready for that matchup, and they're going to run you out of the gym. So everything you take the offense and be really happy and watch its progression and relax on the defense. It's a regular season game against Houston Rockets at home. It's not game 7 of the finals.
Yeah, I was just reading some of these comments. There's some injury concerns with Caruso. I mean, he's been on and off all season alongside Chet, kind of being on and off with injuries. I think in the case of Caruso, it just comes with his age. He's the oldest guy on the team, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's like 30 or so. So, we're going to see injuries from him. He's had lots of, game time overall, and it just comes with the territory of that level of a player that's always playing like 150% on the floor, and he's leaving it all out there. So
exactly.
It's just something, that we need to obviously watch for. But, as we continue the season and he's, getting less and less minutes, he's more of a guy that's kind of a spot player where we put him in for certain scenarios, similar to like a Hartenstein that comes in for Chet, or Caruso is a guy that can come in and be a replacement for Dort when he needs a rest. So he's not someone that we need to, absolutely play him 25 plus minutes a game. Of course, in the playoffs, he'll be getting considerable minutes.
Yeah, he's going to be meaningful in the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, he'll definitely get more meaningful minutes in like the second half of games. Definitely, in the fourth quarter of games, that's where he'll be really key for us. So these knick-knack injuries aren't that worrisome. He hasn't had anything too, long in terms of timeline-wise. So he just had a rough season overall, and he leaves it all out there, and I think he'll be fine come the playoffs. And honestly, we're deep enough that I don't think a Caruso injury kind of pushes me one way or another when it comes to playoff time with the way we're playing right now and with the depth that we have.
Yeah, I agree fully. And just for right now's sake anyway, this Caruso injury doesn't seem to be anything long-term. Came back onto the bench in the second quarter. So, yeah, we'll see. Give him a couple days off or whatnot. Got a couple comments about Shai MVP. Yeah, guys, listen, I thought this was wrapped up a while ago. And now with Jokic being a bit injured and Denver kind of slipping to the 3, I mean, it would take pretty much an undefeated run for Jokic to take this MVP away from Shai. So Shai's got the MVP no matter what he does the rest of the season. So, yeah, we could wrap up that conversation.
Yeah, I'm going to come in with a couple stats to kind of back up what's kind of going on right now. Of course, this is his fourth 50th point game of the season. He's leading this season in 50-point games with 4. No one else has more than 1 right now with Jokic, Giannis, and maybe one other player. He also ties KD for the second most all-time 50-point games, and also ties Russell Westbrook with 4. So, I mean, really impressive from him in that aspect. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander becomes the 12th player in NBA history to record 4 or more 50-point games in a season. As a collective Thunder unit, we're at 40 wins before 10 losses, and now we're at 50 wins before 12 losses that I mentioned before. We also hit 50 wins before any Western Conference team has even hit the 40-win mark, which is ridiculous. Since 2010, this is our 9th 50-win equivalent season. I mean, that's a ridiculous stat in itself, and testament to Presti, the organization, the way we draft, and the way we want to always be in the playoffs, be on top. Great turnaround. And then of course Shai is still leading with the most 20-point games, 30-point games, 40-point games, 50-point games. That's not going to change anytime soon. I just like to point that out. We're on a 4-game win streak, 11-game lead over the number 2 Lakers. I believe they're closer to the 11th seed than they are closer to the 1st seed. We're 3-1 in our series against the Rockets. And up next, of course, we have the Grizzlies coming up here in Memphis. So on ESPN as well. So that's going to be huge. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I wanted to touch up on that a bit too. I think it's real exciting that we're going to have a bit of a schedule where we could, tune into some games that will be competitive. Like you said, a nationally televised game on Wednesday in Memphis. We already took them down in Memphis once this season. I don't see why we wouldn't again, but it's going to be a great game to watch. Then we get the Trailblazers, who are a gritty team. They've been winning a lot of games, so hopefully we can take care of that one. And then the stretch this is the key stretch for the rest of the regular season. Denver at home, back-to-back days. In Boston, in Detroit, in Milwaukee. That's where we're going to learn a lot about this team. Those are the games where I'd like to see them lock in and clamp down more. And you're going to see them do that.
We'll definitely be locked in for
Yeah.
those games for
And
sure. Mark's
you're gonna
going to
see
come
them
in
do
with
that.
a playoff mentality to really test those teams and play the correct rotations. He's not going to be messing around.
Exactly.
He's going to have the right mindset. The guys are going to know kind of the importance of those games. And I can see us maybe, slip up, maybe lose one or two max.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not expecting 3 losses in, that stretch right there.
So the games I want OKC to really focus in on.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to lose games, guys. Don't worry. The games I want to focus in on is the one in Memphis on nationally on ESPN. Denver back to back. Listen, it's hard to beat a team back to back nights, but the way Denver's looking, we can. Listen, we might slip up in Detroit. That's a team who has given us problems in the past, and maybe we take our foot off the gas, but don't worry about Detroit. In Boston, in Milwaukee. Those are the games where, okay, now it's starting to get serious. And even if they do slip up one, you want to see a highly competitive team that ends up showing you that, yeah, we could easily make a run to the finals. So, I mean, It's going to be a super exciting week and a half, to say the least.
This is probably going to be the most exciting stretch of ethical hoops that we'll see from our team and, the other fan bases. And so I'm really excited. John Morant coming into this game, their team isn't playing heavy minutes to their 2 superstars. So I'm curious to see if they'll give them more than 30 minutes against us because, it's a nationally televised game. They're going to really want to win it.
And we took the last one in Memphis as well.
We took the last one, and also the other key thing is they've talked a lot of junk between the players. They've said like, "Hey, OKC is trying to copy our culture with the post game interviews, this, that, and the other." So I know there's some motivating factors, and then Ja's the guy that can get in your ear, and if Shai's kind of pumped up for that, J-Dub, obviously we know what Lou Dort's going to bring in terms of grittiness. So I can see a lot of grittiness coming in that Grizzlies game. The one that I really want to key in on is we need to take these Nuggets seriously. I want to send a message. That's kind of the key thing that I'm looking for is us sending a message to what I believe is our biggest competition out west, which is the Nuggets. They have the second best player in the league. And
nice. I like that.
Yeah, it's like the second best player in the league currently with Jokic. So, I want to send the proper message to these guys coming into the playoffs. Obviously, regular season is regular season. I still believe that, but there is a mentality shift that can happen between the young guys. Some level of belief, and that's what you need when you have a younger roster,
right? More
so than experience and IQ. Those are huge factors in the playoffs, of course, but we need to really have that belief that we can beat that roster. And I think having back-to-back wins, and then imagine us going into the Western Conference Finals or the second round of the playoffs, having them figured out, quote unquote, and I'd love to see that. And I know, of course, we're going to be doing a lot of rushing towards Jokic, sending 2 people over to him and seeing if the rest of the team can beat us, because that is the formula to beat them. And that's the same formula that teams use against us with Shai. So we're going to see a lot of that in this stretch.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. A young team like this, seeing the ball go through the net, just seeing them beat teams in the regular season will give them a boatload of confidence for the playoffs, especially if they match up or when they match up. I also just wanted to focus more on that Memphis game as well, because that's the one that's coming up on Wednesday here. It's also like we have to remember we didn't have Chet in Memphis the last time we played, and we beat them by 13. We started Aaron Wiggins and Alex Caruso that game, so now OKC is pretty much fully healthy. I'm expecting a really great game out of OKC. And just to end that Memphis conversation, I think we're levels above them, and I think we want to show that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we are definitely, maybe not like extreme levels, but we're definitely a level ahead of Memphis overall as a team. So I'm not too worried about that game. The other game that I'm kind of really curious about that has left me kind of just curious, where the Bucks beat us in that NBA Cup tournament. I just want to see that matchup one more time again and see if that was kind of a fluke game where we didn't really care if we won that or not. So I'm curious how that game will kind of flow and go, because the way the Bucks kind of line up against us is they don't want us in the paint at all, and that's going to be, similar to what the Mavericks did to us in the playoffs. That's kind of a mindset of that type of team versus like compared to like a Nuggets team that don't really have a rim protector like that, or the Celtics really don't have the same level of rim protection, so they can't really deploy that type of game plan compared to like playing against Giannis and the center that they have there. So I want to see teams, have those two different types of games where we're going to see teams like the Grizzlies, the Celtics, the Nuggets kind of cover us on the perimeter and really try to double team Shai versus bigger teams like the Bucks, the Mavericks, even the Clippers are a pretty big roster that we have coming up as well. Too. So we're going to see two different types of ways to play, and Mark kind of deploying a different set of lineups against them.
Yeah, and I think that's the good thing about this OKC team is because they have multiple ways to put the ball in the basket. And listen, if you're not super amped for this stretch, I don't know what to tell you. This is just super exciting week and a half of basketball for Oklahoma, this city. So, bringing up Milwaukee real quick too is it's important to notice that they beat the hell out of us in that play-in tournament. But when they came to OKC, they rested about every single player on that roster. So I think we're going to have to, I think we want to get a little bit of our lick back, as somebody would say, like, because it's disrespectful to sit everyone without injuries. Like, there's no reason. So we'll see. But yeah, super exciting week and a half, and big win tonight.
Yeah, another Shai stat that I wanted to mention here was he's shooting 44.7% from three on 6 attempts per game in the month of February, and he'll be continuing that hot streak, after tonight. So he saw this ball going into the basket, and that's what makes Shai different than all the other superstars, because his game is still growing. Like, he's mentioned that multitude of times. Like, he's like, oh, I could have gotten 70 this game, or I should have seen the ball going a lot more. There's these things that I'm working on, like my 3-point shot, my defense. Like, there's things that he still knows that he can still improve on, versus some guys may have already hit their peak and we know what they are as players, versus Shai is, right now kind of learning what his peak is. And I feel like next season he'll be even completely different monster. So
It's still only the beginning for a lot of these guys. Landon Caruso, I don't think it's anything too serious. How was the game? But if you're good to wrap up, I mean, that's pretty much it for me.
I'm good to wrap up. I wanted to give a quick fan shout out. I got a message here from Aiden Hamilton, who mentioned that he completed the Lou Dort and Kenrich walkout from his school, and he recorded it. So if you haven't checked that out on like the OKCX media fan page, go ahead and check that out, where he did, a nice little school walkout.
That's
if you know the type of situation in this. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, anyway, guys, appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe. Follow on Instagram. Follow on X. We're on Spotify. You know where we're at. So, appreciate you guys for listening. And again, this next week and a half, be ready. It's going to be super, super exciting stuff. And, Sapphire, why don't you send us out tonight?
Thunder up, baby!
Let's go.